Hello, this is Ronnie again. I came back to explain the topic I wanted to talk about yesterday about Mexican military. But before I get on to that topic, I want to talk about a few things um, I forgot to mention yesterday in the video. One thing is that I'm not gonna do any more. I'm not gonna do any comparison articles or comparison videos on fighters, tanks, ships, military. Country's military. I'm not gonna do any of that stuff because, like I said, the reason well, not like I said, but the reason why, because they're already been done to death. Two, they're just plain flat out stupid. Three, they don't make no sense at all. And for each military nation's military training and tactics is a lot different from one another. It's like saying U.S. Air Force is similar. It's the same thing like the RAF. It's just, or Indian Air Force is the same thing like the Chinese Air Force, or Israeli Air Force is the same thing like the Iranian Air Force. They're just different. They don't work the same like everybody else's military. It's like, for example, it's like trying to compare. Let's say um, let's go Bolivian Air Force to the French Air Force. It just doesn't work. It's dumb. I don't know why I see this stuff on Facebook defense groups and pages, and I don't know why people do that. It just some people just do it for attention whoring, or just trying to bring in people and have people argue amongst each other. To me, I seen it in military photos and I seen it in other pages, and it's just flat out stupid. No wonder some of those people were just thrown out because of that crap. But um, that's the reason why I don't do them. But I will do my own take on on certain things. Like I want to talk about the GS-17 and the TJs. I want to talk about them, and I'm gonna give my pros and cons on them. And I'll let you guys know when I plan to do that. I'll probably be doing that next week or this week, sometime later this week and next week. I know people probably want to hear about that, but I'm gonna give my take on that. I'm not gonna write any articles about it because there's about a billion of them on there, and like I said, some people. The reason why I want to talk about them because people just overhyping the crap out of these planes, big time, and I want to give my pros and cons on them. Um, so I'll talk about those topics, and ah, I'll talk about them, and I'll give you my opinion and the pros and cons about them. But I know a lot of Indians and Pakistanis ain't gonna like it though. But that's, I don't know. They get all mad about anything anyway. But anyway, another thing I will talk about, uh, like I said in my yesterday's video, I won't be doing any uh, articles about fighter planes from other nations, like I mean fighter planes or any military vehicles. Because the reason why I don't want to do articles on them, like say Abrams or F-15, F-16, MiG-29, T-72, because like I said, billions of articles, billions of books about them. You get, like I said, if you want me to, I could recommend you the books and the websites to go to. Fast is one of them, really good site. Even though people don't like it, it's 50-50 between them. Wikipedia is also a good site. There's even a reference page that'll take you to them. But the books you want to get on them, Osprey's a good books on them. Jane's, also get the aerospace books. They're very good. Um, there's tons of topics on that subjects. The phone's ringing. Hold on. Oh well, no one important. But like I said, just just I mean the topics on those aircraft are easy and are like a penny a dozen. You could just get them anywhere. Um, but I'll make an exception to the rule. I will talk about the unknown variants or the canceled variants of those said fighters or military vehicles. Um, I mostly more I know it all about. I mostly know about military aircraft most, but I could also talk about ships and vehicles. I have to do a little bit more research on them, but I'll do them. But and I will also I mean on canceled variants and stuff. But I will do those, and also if nations had proposals or had plans to buy them, but weren't how come they weren't bought? I'll explain those. Like for example, the Kafir fighters for Mexico or the Su-35 for India. I'll talk about that why they weren't bought. I'll talk about that. The last thing I want to talk about, I will. This is not really defense related, but I'm gonna make some tip videos, especially about like college, because I want to give some people some clear ideas what to do and do not in college, um, and how you improve yourself. I will also talk about trade school and stuff like that too, and what's better for you and what's not. I'll talk about that. I'll probably do a topic on that tomorrow, because like I said, I'm gonna be starting school on Tuesday, and yeah, Tuesday I'll be starting school, and I'll talk about it. Um, but yeah, that's all. Those are the only things I'm gonna just to let you guys know. If I forget anything else, and I'll make this. And my last topic I forgot. If you guys got any requests, like I did on, like I said about the fighters canceled or any nations and stuff like that proposals, yeah, just send me a request. Let me know. I'm thinking about putting these videos on YouTube. Probably will in the near future, even though these are not really too good videos. I don't have a $100 video camera, and I don't really know how to use all that video recording stuff. But I'll figure something out, and I'll let you guys know about that. But on this topic about Mexican military, and I've been one, and the reason I want to talk about this, and I really didn't really get a chance to talk about it when I was talking to Larkins about the Mexican military because it was mostly focused on the Air Force, but there was a lot of things I kind of left out, and or that I just completely forgot about them. One of the things that people was, I will try to start with some basics um, on what's going on and why some people are lately has even got has turned into like a concerning moment for them because now Mexico has been buying billions of dollars worth of military equipment in the last few years. Sorry, that's a cat in the background. Um, but in the last few years, well, I'll say last couple of years, Mexico's going through a massive revamption. I mean, a massive upgrade of everything, which was totally overdue for decades. Most of the stuff has been kind of been held off since the 1980s. They had a lot of proposals to do what they want to do back in the 80s, but then the peso crashed in 1982. Then followed 3 years later, you had the Mexican City. The massive earthquake in Mexico City um, in 1985. So, and years kind of dragged on where a lot of things did not work out for the Mexican military. You had the Chiapas War, which kind of like put everything on a standstill, and the drug war, which also put a lot of things on a standstill. So, but I will also talk about um, why are they improving their military and what's their uh, new tactics, what's their new agenda for their military in the future. The net the mili- I will say this. Hold on. I would recommend reading this article. Not this one. Sorry. Sorry about all that stuff. This one, the Air Force Monthly. It's the August edition, and my friend Mariano did an article on the Mexican Air Force, and he did a pretty good one and an excellent article. which talks about the needs and and the problems with facing the Mexican military in general to this day, even despite the revamping and massive upgrades. Um, but I'll talk about that in a second. The new agenda and tactics that Mexico is looking to enforce is that they're moving out of that isolation state. In the past, due to with the exception of World War II, they have a doctrine called the Estrada Doctrine. It's similar to the Article 9 of the Constitution of Japan, which means they're pacifists. They don't want to get in anybody else's wars or anybody else's problems, which is true, which is a good thing. But in the last since the 1990, Carlos Salinas, for example, I'll also tell this fact too because a lot of people don't know, and I found this by accident. Um, since the 1970s, a lot of people don't know is that Mexico, uh, even though Mexico wasn't involved in the Vietnam War, there was a lot of Mexican people from that was volunteering. Same with the Canadians. A lot of people probably don't know, but a lot of Mexicans and Canadians went to the U.S. and or that they went to the U.S. and joined the U.S. military to fight in Vietnam. A lot of people don't really know that, but I found that like some years back, and I didn't want to talk about it, but it just kind of skipped my mind. Mostly as volunteers and stuff. Um, some, but but on Carlos Salinas' proposal back in 1990, Carlos Salinas proposed to send Mexican military troops to Iraq to fight against Saddam Hussein during Desert Storm. But the Mexican Congress did not like that, so they pretty much killed that proposal because, according to the Mexican Congress, there was no declaration of war against Iraq, even though UN and pretty much declared war on Iraq to get out of Kuwait. But they kind of stood out, so they couldn't get involved in that war. But since then, Mexico has been moving into humanitarian purposes. They were in Honduras during the hurricanes. They also were in. They were sent to Indonesia during the 2004 tsunami and earthquake. They were sent to United States during Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and they were sent to Haiti some years later. Can't forget the year. I think it was 2008 or 2000. No, I think it was 2008 or 2010. I got those years for Haiti, but they sent forces to Haiti. Um, so they've been pretty much kind of busy with humanitarian, but the last few years they've been looking to enforce into um, to sending troops to peacekeeping missions and for the UN, like, or they're in Africa or Haiti or Middle East or Asia, and they've been wanting to do that for some years now. The problem is the Mexican Congress has been up and down over it, but it looks like lately in the last couple of years the Mexican Congress has been slowly but surely letting them go through. Right now there is some what do they call those people? I forgot. Uh, they're kind of like not real. I forgot the name of it, but they're like they sent officers over there more of as like a look on. It's like I forgot what they call them, like spectators and stuff like that. But now there's a word for it. I forgot what it's called, but they're sending their soldiers over there as spectators and see what do's and don'ts and learning the ways of how to do peacekeeping. But the peacekeeping rule has been very controversial. One thing a lot of people said they should be focusing on um, get rid of that drug cartels and stuff like that. But I do agree on that too, but it's 50-50 because I kind of agree they need to get rid of drug cartels, but at the same time, um, focus on sending troops overseas too. Um, but the thing is, um, Okay. Um, the next agenda too is that while a lot of people don't really talk about it, there's also external threats as also presenting themselves in compared to Mexico too. There's continuously issues going on in Central America, definitely since some of the drug cartels has fled down there because Mexico just pretty much kicked most of them out, or that gang bangers you got, and then you have corrupt politicians. Now you got now lately back land issues are coming back into fashion now with Nicaragua, with Colombia, or fighting over those islands. Panama with Colombia. It just that's kind of becoming a concern because last thing Mexico needs is a mass exodus of people coming from all those countries um, crossing through that border. It would make it just be a just be a massive mess. There's also concerns and threats from um, Venezuela too, which is also a major concern, and because they've been known to be supplying the drug cartels and FARC and all that stuff in Colombia and Mexico too. And Mexico and Venezuela hasn't really been on friendly terms in the last few years. Well, almost a decade now. Um, so that's another reason why Mexico is also revamping their military, and they're replacing all their older World War II vessels, like the Mexican Navy, with new faster ships and indigenous made ships like the Durango, Oaxaca, and and now they're going to be buying corvettes like the Sigma, and they're also looking at the Goldwyn and the Frema um, class frigates and corvettes from Netherlands and France. They're also, I know in talks that they're looking at buying an LHD, a landing helicopter transport ships that were for both humanitarian and also peacekeeping roles too. And that's been on the talking list for a long time. Like I said, they almost, gosh, I forgot what they named those ships. But well, the USS Denver and Ogden, USS Ogden back in 2006 and seven. But the deal to buy them were canceled because it would just cost so much money to upgrade them. And the plans to buy the Bolum, which was a transport slash OPV, was planned, but it was canceled too. The question on the but the Mexican Navy has been making a lot of grounds on a number of things compared to the other branches of the military. They've been building up their training force. They're building up their armored force slowly but surely. Even though there's Humvees and other armored vehicles, but they're also looking to build amphibious assault vehicles in the near future. They're also looking at subs, yes, submarines, um, and also talking about bringing back the requirement for fighters and long-range maritime strike aircraft. Even though the plans to buy those similar aircraft like the Flanker back in 2006 and 7 fell apart due to corruption issues. And I'll get on to that topic about that corruption issues in a second. Um, but they're looking to their talks about bringing them back for for those roles in certain parts of Mexico, and also an airborne early warning system, like similar to the what the Mexican Air Force is using E99. So they're looking to expand more around the country and around areas, and that's a pretty damn good smart move in my opinion, and which should have been done many years ago. Um, so they're boosting their anti-ship, anti-aircraft, and anti-submarine rules, which most of the time has been ignored. Most of the it's just been catching drug dealers and stuff like that, drug cartels and stuff. I mean, no, I mean drug smugglers. I mean not drug dealers. Well, that's the same thing. But and other rules and stuff. But and that Mexican Navy's also got advantages over the other branches too. Is that building up their indigenous network. I mean, domestic made, with like UAVs. They just announced just like a week ago. They're now announced that they're going to be building their own ships. Well, not announced, but it's been done for like the last decade. Um, so and they had developed some of their own stuff and not really relying on foreign buyers that much. So that's what they're trying to do. Um, but they're doing the Mexican Navy has an advantage or the Mexican Army or Mexican Air Force. Well, Sedena, which is pretty much their Sedena runs Air Force and Army, while Samar is the Mexican Navy and Mexican Marines. But they're doing a better effort with that than Sedena is, the Mexican Navy, and they know how to do stuff despite having um, small funding. And like I said, what a lot of people don't know, the Mexican military is one of the least budgeted militaries in Latin America or in North America, spending about $8 billion. They spend about like 0 to 1% of their budget for the military, compared to other militaries around the nation, around the area. So it is one of the least spent militaries, but they know how to manage their fundings for getting better things. Um, the thing is, I want to talk about the Mexican Air Force now. The Mexican Air Force lately this year has been getting massive funding. They got the new C295s, the C295W especially, T6 Texan 2s, Blackhawks, Cougars. They bought the French-made radar systems. I forgot the name of them right off the bat, but they're long. They bought 6 or 7 of them, um, and a number of UAVs, and they're also just upgraded their P99 and E99 surveillance and airborne early warning aircraft. Um, but that's what they've been doing for the last few years. Just been um, expanding on that. Like I said, if you want to know more about the Mexican Air Force, you could read that. You could go on that podcast what me and Larkins did a few months back. But I'll like I but um, but the thing is, the Mexican Air Force has a drawback, and I'll say this about Sedena in general. I think Sedena and I think the Mexican Air Force needs to break away from Sedena big time. They need to. And what Mariano said about this, and many other people have said about this, is that Mexican Air Force needs to be separated, because I've been saying this for decades in a number of forums and groups too, is that half the money, while it just most of the money doesn't really go to new equipment. Most of the money goes to supporting infantry and supporting generals, officers, and stuff like that, and not enough in equipment. So it leaves like a quagmire with, and you pretty much have to pick and choose which is needed and which is not, and this is why the Mexican Air Forces has been kind of like a slow growing force. And I think it's time for the Mexican Air Force to separate from Sedena big time, and let the Mexican Army have their own budget and their own system to work with, like the Mexican Navy does. Mexican Navy is pretty much the opposite. They do their stuff a lot better. But Sedena, they got the Air Force and Army, and it's pretty much just leaves it to uh, table. It's pretty much give this side the full amount and give this other side the table scraps. Or it's just a pick and choose, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. pure and simple. That's the reason why. That's one of the reasons why the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Army broke away, because working here and there and which is needed, tanks or aircraft. So that's why they kind of broke away. That's one of the reasons. There's many other reasons why they broke away too. Um, but it's just, and that another thing. The reason why the Mexican Air Force would would be a better separate force, because it would also have their own funding for infantry. I mean for their own soldiers and their airmen and stuff like that. But they will also have enough. It would be like a 50-50 budget. You have equipment, and you have your officers and soldiers, and your airmen. Always get them confused, I know. But either way, that you guys get the point. Um, and that's right there could also help out on getting faster. Getting aircraft much more faster, getting materials, getting things done as fast as possible and in a more efficient way. Like fighters, they really need. It's just been the fighters. Everybody's like, even so bad that some like fam group, for example, kind of banned the issue on fighters now. But like I said, the F5s, yeah, they and the trainers and stuff like that. There's only 4 or 5 F5s protecting Mexico at one time, and mostly based in Mexico City. That's not really a really efficient Air Force right there. There's no interception rate. It's like, I seriously, this Mariano did a very damn good article on the Mexican Air Force, and the problem is, he's right. The F5, they're pretty much stuck in Mexico City. Earlier this year, they had an issue where an airliner from the U.S., and even though it was accidental, but one of the guys hit one of those hijacking alert buttons. So they pretty much had to call an F5 from Mexico City to fly all the way up to Tijuana to intercept this aircraft. Or was it, no, it was Tijuana, but it was close, coming near. Like it was between Acapulco and Tijuana, but it was coming near that. But they had to send a fighter all the way over there to see, uh, to get to intercept it, because you don't know that hijacked plane could turn around and make a mad dash to any target. You don't know. It just that's what happened on 9/11. So that's a thing. Mexico needs a lot of fighters in general. They need to base them in critical parts of the country, north, central, and south, and it's not working that way. It just, the F5s are really, they're good aircraft, but they're short legged and they're old. Um, so they need to get they need to get some new aircraft, and they need to do some and they need to base them in other places around Mexico. That's what they need to start doing. And the same thing with attack aircraft and trainers and stuff like that. Well, they got the advanced trainers down pat, but they still need like a lift aircraft, like the Yak 130, which I don't think they will be buying any Russian equipment anytime soon. But the Hawk and the MB346, I'm thinking, uh, aircraft like that to supplement that, the fighters, and also boost up the training morale and efficiency. So that's what Mexico needs to start. I mean, that's what the Mexican Air Force needs to do. Another thing is that on the basing, they need to fix. They need to base some aircraft permanently, like transport aircraft especially, into certain parts. Not keep them at Santa Lucia all the time. They need a basing, like in other parts of Mexico, because you can't really keep all your eggs in one basket. It doesn't work that way, and something can happen. Don't forget, Mexico City lays right next to a fault line, and also near a volcano. If something happens there, and that could pretty much immobilize most of the Mexican Air Force, about 80% of it, because most of the stuff is based from that base there in Mexico City. So they need to start reorganizing and better planning of their their transport fleet. I think they're doing a little by little on that. They're slowly doing that, but that's what they need to start doing is reorganization, and so I'm kind of glad they're doing that. I know they're boosting, but the main focus has always been about Mexican Air Force. They've always been buying transport aircraft and helicopters since the Chiapas War, because a lot of people don't know the Chiapas War was a helicopter war of Mexico, and they had to rely on civilians, police, government helicopters to push to move troops around. Nowadays, they want to have that cavalry units, which they're starting to do now. That phone ringing again. Hold on. Ah. But yeah, that's what I got to say about the Mexican Air Force. And Mariano did an excellent article on this topic. He didn't BS around about it or anything. And I think the problem is, I think people in the fam groups and the old timers, I call them, need to get over that. That's another thing I'm going to talk about in this, too, is that their doctrine. I'll talk about that in a separate. And the Army, let me talk about the Army, then I'll talk about the doctrine, tactics, and stuff. The Army is also doing a lot of improvements, an excellent job, too. But it, too, suffers the same thing like the Mexican Air Force does. Most of the money goes to infantry, soldiers, officers, while table scraps will go to equipment. They have been doing a massive overhaul and buying Sandcats, the Oshkosh Sandcats, for example, and Humvees to boost their force. But their armor force, on the other hand, is uh, over like 30 years old, like 30, 35 years old. But they have recently put an upgrade for the ERC 90s. And now they're going to put a requirement for 105 new armored vehicles. Most likely probably from French, but I also heard something that the Striker armored vehicle and Pandar and the Pateria is also another recommendation for Mexican military, for the Mexican army. But their armor force is old. It's a lot of their vehicles are from either it's mostly over 30 years old, and some are even older than that. Some are dating back in World War II days. They're using well, the M101, yeah, those are very popular uh, all over the world. South Korea just recently upgraded them, turned them into mobile artillery units. But they should be upgraded or that needs to be replaced. And most of the artillery is like short ranged. They need to be moving into self-propelled and that with tow-based artillery systems and MLRS systems. Armored vehicles like uh, APCs are old. They're they're 50s. They're from the 1950s. The French AMX-13s, uh, based. I forget what the heck they call them, but they're APC variants of them. And you have the Hawk 11. I mean, I call it Hawk, but it's not really spelled HWK. I mean, it's spelled HWK, but it's not spelled HAWK. They bought from Germany back in the '63. They're pretty much outdated, so they pretty much now are getting slowly but surely getting new armored vehicles. Um, and that's what I'm also saying. The Mexican army needs to be their own separate group. The Mexican Air Force needs to be a separate group. And I think Sedina should realize that now. They need to get rid of this, and politics needs to get the heck out of it too. They need to have their own separate uh, branches for their own and with their own doctrines and their own support and stuff like that. That's why Sedina should learn a lot from the Mexican Navy because they're doing an excellent job on proficiency and efficiency on a lot of things compared to what Sedina is doing. Even though Sedina's approving, yeah, but like I said, they better off being separate branches. Um, the reason why I talk about And people will be saying, why does Mexico need artillery units? Why does Mexico need tanks? Why does Mexico need armored vehicles? They're no threat. United States is up there. The United States is above. They'll come and protect us. Yeah, in Central America, we pretty much they're no threat to us. But that's not really the issue, though. That's not really the issue. It's you can't really rely on the United States for defense of your nation. That's a cop out, and that's a stupidity move. Every time I hear that, it's like a dumb. It's stupid, and that's also make it's like pretty much you just gave up. It's just like, well, if somebody came in our country, I'll just give up. That's what's the point fighting for? That's a give up move. And people will always bring up other things. It's pretty sad when I hear that from people. You can't really rely on other people for to defend your other country. You can't rely on people. You can't rely on your nations to defend your own country. That's stupid. You got to fight for your own country. And that's only a few people. It's not all Mexico thinks like that. So, but the thing is, Mexico needs to have a decent military. I'm not saying they should build a military up similar to the United States or China or all those things. No, they need to have a decent military where they can protect themselves all around, and just in case something does happen. Um, Another thing is that people, and you see this in fan group or some of the old, like I said, old timers, they think all the weapons they're using and like rockets and bombs and machine guns is like the efficient. It's like a taboo of precision guided weapons. I don't know why they're like that on that. In my opinion, it's kind of dumb. You, Precision guided weapons are the new thing, and that's what Mexico needs to get into big time. Rockets, machine guns, and dumb bombs ain't gonna do very much nothing. Well, they will do a lot of damage, but you're also going to do additional collateral damage too. So it makes the issue kind of like mundane a little bit and kind of redundant. So that's why you don't really see too much of them in combat. And but that stuff right there needs to change. A lot of stuff needs to be done. That exercise they did, I don't care what anybody has to say about that exercise. It was just a joke. It was not really that great of an exercise. But I'm glad they're working. They're slowly but surely building up their force. I will say this though, and a lot of people you see them in Latin American forums, and and other military forums and stuff like that, groups. I will say this: Mexico is now more of a battle trained military now, more tested towards more of asymmetrical warfare type battlefield training. They do have conventional training, but they're mostly focused on expedition and asymmetrical warfare. Because, like I said, they've been fighting the drug cartels with the drug war and other things. So they're pretty much built like that now. And unlike some of those other militaries in South America and stuff like that, where they're parading around all their military stuff, there's only a few nations I give respect that has battlefield training, and that's Colombia, Mexico, um, some certain like Guatemala and Brazil, Argentina has them too, but Argentina since the Falklands War pretty much kind of collapsed. Some nations already have battlefield training, but not trying to say who's better and who's not. But it's just kind of and people bring up these top 10. That's another stupid thing. I'll talk about that later on. Well, it's like those comparisons. Top 10s are stupid too. But like I said, Mexico does already have the battlefield training, and in both expedition and in asymmetrical warfare. So they could, even though they're small force compared to nations around them, they could do some devastating damage. Like I said, when you're playing with it, You're putting a symmetrical and asymmetrical. They're both different types of warfare. And if you play them, those types of warfare very good, you could break a symmetrical force. And definitely, if a nation uses symmetrical and asymmetrical warfare to the advantages, you you get some very good results and a very devastated enemy. That's all I gotta say about that. But the reason, like, even though I didn't really go too much on it, and I might come back to it again. And I know I went 40 minutes to this video, and I don't want to bore you guys. But a lot of things has been, I won't say a lot of things has been improving, but a lot of things has been improved. Number of things has been improving a lot for Mexico in the last decade compared to, because most of it is on a standstill. Most of it's been delayed due to the drug war or economic factors. And then, like I said, Mexico is not like a third world nation anymore. It's a second world nation. Yeah, the immigration issue, but that's a different topic. And a thing about that I will say about the immigration issue is that a lot of Mexican immigrants are slowly coming to this country. It's it's been going down for since 2008 because the Mexican economy is getting better and better and better, even despite what's going on, the natural disasters, drug war, or the recession. It's still going better and better. And that's the thing about Mexico. It's one of those. I will say this: some of the countries like Mexico and Taiwan has one of the most unusual. Uh, when it comes to economical recessions and stuff like that, those countries know how to get their stuff, get on their asses and get on the ball again. And they surely will, and they surely do. Um, that like I said, Mexico's a lot different now than what it is like a decade or 20 years ago. Lots of things has changed. They got aerospace developed. Well, like I said, I'll start on this. Yeah, they're famous for oil and beaches, but that's not their only economic factor. You got manufacturing, aerospace, science and technology, um, automobiles, computers, electronics. They even got that. They even making this stuff domestic on their own. Not, I know they got Sony, they got all these other companies, Ford and Chevy, building stuff down there too. But they also produce their own stuff. You got Linux. Well, not Linux like the computer system, like Linux. I think that's how you pronounce it. They got their own computers, TVs, tablets. Mi Box is one of them. You got the MXT, their own cars down there. They're producing their own aircraft, UAVs. They're building their own satellites down there. They got their own nuclear reactors down there. They're it's not like they're also planning to build high speed rail systems around Mexico too. So it's not like this poor country um, from the 1950s and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know Mexico's a pretty advanced country. And Mexico back in the 50s and 60s, had everything been played right, it would rival some of these big nations around the world. They would, because they if politics, that's a problem. The biggest problem has been politics and corruption with Mexico. If Mexico it's slowly coming down. It's slowly, but I know corruption's still there, but slowly coming down. But it exists. But once that stuff is taken care of, and hopefully, and right now, even though they got a crappy president, I don't really care for Enrique Pena Nito. I don't really care for the guy. Uh, but Calderon, the last president that was in Mexico, pretty much built that country along with Zedelo. I can't pronounce his last name. Zedelo, which was and Calderon built that country, and nowadays it's slowly gaining ground, and it's now the top 15 of the largest economies in the world. So they're doing a lot better, and like I said, their tactics on military is changing. They're getting rid of that Estrada doctrine. They're like the Japanese did with the Article 9. They're moving away from the isolation and moving into um, to the world to the world to the international light now. That's all I'm gonna say. But that's what they're doing now, and that's it's gonna be a very different. Um, but that's the only thing I'm gonna come back to the topic. I don't know. I kind of said it good, kind of said it bad. I'll come back to it on the Mexican military. Like I said, they're doing a lot of maneuvers and doing better on a lot of things.